In this video, we're going to look at how we can write the equation of a line perpendicular to another line through a given point. So to start off, what we need to do is first we need to find some information about the original line. And to do that, what we first do is solve that original line for y. We get it in this form, y equals mx plus b, which is the slope-intercept form. And we do that so that we're able to easily identify the slope of the line. Once we identify that slope, we can then identify the opposite reciprocal slope of the line. And the reason we're doing this is because, as we learned in previous videos, opposite reciprocal slope makes a perpendicular line to original given line. So once we know that opposite reciprocal slope, then we can substitute that m value, our slope, into an equation along with an xy that we're given in the problem. But instead of substituting it into that slope-intercept equation, we're going to substitute it into the point-slope formula, which is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. From here, we will solve the equation for y, and then we'll actually be done. We don't have to do this last step since we switched to using this formula. Now let's take a look at an example problem. So we want to write a line, perpendicular line, y equals 1/2 x minus 2, that passes through the point 1, 0. So to do this, the first thing we need to do is we need to identify the slope of the original line. So that original slope is 1/2. And we don't really need to worry about that y-intercept. So look at that 1/2, that's the original line slope. If we want a line that's perpendicular, we need an opposite reciprocal slope to that. So the slope of our new line would have to be the opposite reciprocal of 1/2, which is -2/1, which is really just -2. Now what we need to do is then look at the point that line goes through, which is 1, 0. Once we have those two pieces of information, the slope and the point it goes through, then we just have to write a new equation using that point-slope formula. So we take y minus y1, which in this case is 0, is equal to the slope, -2, parentheses x minus x1, which for this problem is 1. And then we simplify from there. Y minus 0 is y. And then we distribute that -2, so we get -2x plus 2. So this is an equation of a line that is perpendicular to the original line we were given and goes through the point 1, 0. That's it. So what these lines would kind of look like on a graph, if you just did a rough sketch of a graph, they would kind of look something like this. This would be the original line, and then this, we'll do it in pink here, would be the new line. And those lines would end up being perpendicular to each other, like that. Okay, let's look at another example. So in this example, we're going to write the equation of a line perpendicular to the line 2x plus 3y equals 9 and passes through the point 6, -1. Now in this example, our original equation is not in that slope-intercept form, and so I can't instantly identify what the slope is. So what I need to do is I need to do some work with that original line. All right, let's do some work with this original. So we're starting with 2x plus 3y equals 9, and I know I want to get this equation set equal to just y. So I'm going to get rid of this 2x here by subtracting from both sides. Then I need to get rid of that 3, so I'm going to divide both terms by 3, or all terms by 3, really. And then we get y is equal to -2/3 x plus 9 divided by 3, or 3. And remember, in our original line, the only thing we care about is the slope. That y-intercept is not really important. So my slope here is -2/3. Now, to create our new line, in this case, our new perpendicular line, we need to change that negative 2/3 slope to the opposite reciprocal. So opposite's going to make it positive, reciprocal is going to make it 3/2. So from here, now we have the slope, and the only other piece we need to write our line is that point right there, 6, -1. 6, -1. Now that we have those two things, we can substitute this into the point slope formula, which says y minus y1, which is -1 in this case, is equal to m, 3/2, times x minus x1, which is 6. Then we simplify from there. We get y plus 1. We have to distribute this 3/2. We get 3/2 x minus 3/2 times 6 is going to be 9. And then we just have one more step to solve here. We subtract that 1. So we get y is equal to 3/2 x minus 10. Now, this equation is perpendicular to this original equation that we had up here, and it passes through the point 6, -1. And that's it. A way to check this would be to take these numbers and substitute them in for x and y here and see if you get a true statement, and that would be a good way to check that. Alright, let's take a look at one more example. Example number 6. Now, this example is even a little bit more different, where they don't even give us the equation of a line. They just give us 2 points that a given line goes through, and they want us to write a line that's perpendicular to that. So remember, anytime you're finding perpendicular lines, the key thing is identify that slope. So if we start out with our original line, we want to first figure out what that slope is. Remember, if I have 2 points, to get the slope, all I have to do is subtract the 2 y values, so 5 minus 11, and put that over subtracting the 2 x values, because slope is just change in y over the change in x. And so we get that, and then we just simplify. 5 minus 11 is -6. 3 minus 6 is -3. That simplifies to 2. So our slope of the original line is 2. Now what we have to do is go back and make an equation of a perpendicular line. So our perpendicular line, rewrite that, make it a little nicer. So perpendicular line, remember the slope needs to be the opposite reciprocal of the original slope. So our original slope was 2, the opposite reciprocal of that is negative, and then 2 reciprocates to 1/2. And then we also have to look at what point it has to go through, and in this case it goes through the point 2, 4. Now I substitute these into that point slope formula that says y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And then from there we just simplify this equation and solve for y. So we get y minus 4, distribute that -1/2, and 1/2 x plus 1, then add 4 to both sides, and we get a final answer, -1/2 x plus 5. And that's it. So there is our equation that is perpendicular to a line that goes through those 2 points, and it also goes through that point 2, 4. Alright, so that was a lot of information to take in if you watched all 4 videos, and you need some practice. So continue to the 5th video if you're ready to look at what that practice is.